So one question I often get asked as a jazz guitar teacher is a really common question, you see it a lot, which is, what do I play over this chord progression? And it's usually something which is a little bit less familiar, so something which isn't, an obvious 2-5-1. Let's take, for instance, the first two chords of Power Sensitive, which is always a, it's a beautiful chord progression. It's not obviously 2-5-1 oriented. And Tom Jobim often wrote very beautiful chord progressions that avoided that particular harmonic cliche. So, for instance, I just played chord shapes: D minor ninth, D flat diminished, C minor sixth, then G7 with a B in the bass, B flat major seventh. Beautiful. Apparently, it's from Chopin, although I think it's been changed a little bit. And it's that beautiful bass walk down, which is familiar from all sorts of classical music as well as jazz. So how do we solo through this beautiful chord progression? And the answer, I think, is always play the chords. I think this is actually a bit of a non-question, right? So how do we do that? Well, I have quite a few other videos that discuss this approach in detail. Perhaps the simplest approach is to use triads, which I talk about. So I'll just quickly take you through triads in this progression. And perhaps the easiest way to do it is just to take the basic guitar grips for the simplest version of the chords you can imagine. So this is D minor. You can obviously play D flat diminished, but perhaps instead of that, you might be more comfortable playing A flat major, C minor, G major. So these real sort of rock grips, and it actually sounds a bit like a rock song, doesn't it? Like Hotel California or something, a little bit. Maybe not so much when we get to the C minor, and then B flat major. Okay, and get really good at just doing that. So on, right? So that sounds nice enough on its own. And that will give you that starting point. Now, you probably might think, yeah, but I can't play jazz that way. So I've got to know the secret jazz notes. And you can embellish those chord basic triad sounds by using, passing tones, lower neighbours, passing tones. For instance, let's go back to the D minor. Upper and lower neighbours. And then it's A7, D minor. That's very traditional, almost gypsy jazz way to do it, okay? But there's other things you can do as well, because if you look at the basic chord shapes I'm playing, the slightly richer harmony that you might find in a bossa tune, you can use that. And if I put that together with my basic chord shapes, ooh, that sounds like something. So this was my C minor 6th shape, and add that to a C minor. And then I'll probably play B flat major there, right? So you can take ideas straight out of the chord shapes. Sorry, missed one there. But you can also add them to the other chord shapes you know. So if you more chord shapes you know, for instance, D minor ninth. Some common shape sounds for D minor 9. D minor 7. Maybe you want that sound, which is a little bit more kind of angular. That's a C major triad with the D flat in the bass. The D flat in the bass even. Add the D flat in there. Okay, we've got that shape, maybe that shape. maybe that shape. You know, if you've done your drop twos, you have all these, don't you? You know, you can all play them. You know, the more chord shapes you know, the more things you have to play. And then we go to the G7. See? The more shapes you know. The more you have to say as a single note player. So in that sense, like, if you're having trouble finding things to play over the chords, maybe actually the secret to addressing that is not necessarily learning more single note vocabulary, but actually learning more voicings, because the voicings can always be turned into single note vocabulary. Depends how you map the fretboard. Increasingly, I'm finding that I want to leave as little space as possible between my chord playing and my single note playing. But you know, if you practice arpeggios like this, you know, let's take the let's take a D minor 7, for instance. You know, which is sort of straight up and down in the manner that a pianist would play it. You know, same with the diminished. You know, and so on. That works fine as well. And there's no reason why you're limited to that. You can play subs. You can play more extended voicings. Chord scales. If you do play chord scales, that sensibility with which you play those scales will now be informed by your understanding of the underlying chords. Same is true for bop language or anything else you might drop in there. So, hope that answers that question for every tune that you ever see ever again.